Hey, what's going on? It's Inventor here, with my Minion Necromancer in Diablo 4, Season 8. I just cleared Pit 55 to unlock Torment 4, so I wanted to share my build with you in case anyone was struggling to reach the endgame with minions. In this build overview, I'm going to cover my character, abilities, progression, and other relevant information. So first I'll talk about my gear. Starting with my weapon, I'm using this ancestral two-handed sword with reanimation aspect, but it has no weapon temper because I couldn't find the minion augments recipe. Now, right away you might wonder, where's the new unique blade for the Minion Necro? I have one right here, but there's a catch. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this weapon feels weak as heck. I managed to get the Sanguivir Blade of Zir from my second Lord Zir run. However, when I tried using it, I found it to be very underwhelming despite its affixes. This sword's effect works for Army of the Dead specifically, but a lot of my damage comes from boosting my minion damage in conjunction with Ring of Mendelin. Now, yes, this blade is non-ancestral, and yes, I lose a lot of damage because not having crit strike damage means that my Beastmaster's training isn't as effective. With that said, you can take what I'm saying here with a grain of salt since I don't have a proper gear setup to test it yet. But as it stands right now, I don't see how this unique can do more damage than my current weapon overall. Especially after Army of the Dead's damage got capped at 200% this patch, as you can see here. Maybe there's also some secret tech or strategy I don't know about that boosts this weapon's effect like crazy, but frankly, I just can't justify using the Sanguivir on my build. Going over the rest of my equipment, GA Max Life Helm with Hardened Bones for damage reduction, GA Int Armor with Occult Dominion, which gives my minions attack speed from Callan's Edict, and helps me proc Mendelin. Vehement Brawlers on my gloves to reduce the cooldown on my ult and boost my damage. So you can see right now it's 31-second cooldown. Without my gloves, it's 33-second cooldown. Okay, these Blood Moon Breaches, I picked them up all the way back at level 50, and I just never found a better pair since then. Even though the unique effect didn't roll very well, I'm using this because the item is just too good to get rid of, even if the item power is pretty low. With Flicker Step, I evade through packs to reduce the cooldown on my ult, Army of the Dead. Like so. So I'm gonna put on multiple training dummies. When I activate my ult, you see that it is a 31-second cooldown. I evade past them, it reduces the cooldown by 10 seconds. And then every time I attack, it also reduces the cooldown of evade, which makes it more frequent, as you can see. I'm gonna ult again. I attack, I evade, I attack, attack, evade, attack, attack, evade. And my ult is back up again. This goes hand in hand with my amulet right here, which has Unyielding Commander's Aspect. Having Army of the Dead active with this aspect is critical for this build, since without it, you do significantly less damage. My GA Max Life ring here has Frenzied Dead aspect to help reach the attack speed cap for my minions. The attack speed cap for minions is 200%, and that goes hand in hand with the Cult Leader Legendary node too. And last but definitely not least, We have the One Ring to rule them all. Ring of Mendelin, which more or less brings this build to life. It essentially allows this build to function in the higher torments. Here, let me show you. So I'm going to reset the training dummy. I'll make it a boss. And let me actually set it to single training dummy. And notice how the boss's health goes down in chunks. But if I were to reset the dummy, and I were to not have Ring of Mendelin, then my minions are certainly still doing damage, but they're taking blatantly longer to kill this boss dummy. So Ring of Mendelin is far and away the most important item on this build still for the Minion Necro. See what I mean? Other things to note when it comes to items, make sure to have elixirs and incense on hand as needed. You'll also notice that I rolled for armor stat on my defensive slots and diamonds in my jewelry sockets. These go hand in hand with my elixirs and incense to reach the armor and resistances cap, and spiked armor helps too. Spiked armor is one of the passives. I think it's this one, yeah. So this gives 40% more armor by itself, and you'll see that I'm at 1100 right now. This is because I'm doing this testing on Torment 3 so that you can actually see the difference in damage. If I were to pop this incense, I get an additional 150 armor, and that allows me to reach the cap even when I'm on Torment 4. Redamine Buzz and Elixir of Fortitude helps boost my life, and Spiral Morning just gives me all stats across the board. So that's for Elixir and Incense. And for my rune effects, I run Crit Strike Chance and Frost Nova. Now for the boss powers, my setup was Urivar's as the main power, Beastmasters, Hatred's Embrace, and Blackmailers as the side powers. Along with its damage effect, Urivar's has a free 15% cooldown reduction. As for the modifier powers, free 150% multiplicative damage boost from Beastmaster speaks for itself, and so does the 50% crit strike chance from Hatred's Embrace. But Blackmailers, which converts Fortify into Barrier, might not be so obvious, so you can actually just take a look at my life pool here, and you'll see that I have as much barrier, almost as much barrier as I do life. And I had, well, at this point I have a little bit more barrier than Fortify because Fortify is slowly starting to decay, but get the idea. So with this boss power, my barrier just goes sky high with this thing on. I'm tanky not only because I have a bunch of life with Fortify on top as a Necro, but because Blackmailers gives me an additional layer of protection in the form of Barrier. The way I would level my powers here would be that I max out Beastmasters and Hatred's Embrace first, and then Blackmailers second. Urivar's, even though it's my main power, is last priority, since I'm mainly just using its cooldown reduction, which doesn't scale with ranks, so I just left this at rank 1. There are other options for these boss powers and how to level them, of course, like getting more damage from sharpshooters or something, but this is what worked for me. Regarding skills, I'm not going to go over everything. For my skill tree, I took as many multiplicative damage modifiers as I could with the Callan's Edict key passive to boost my minions' attack speed and damage. On my skill bar, I'm running Raise Skeleton to boost minion damage with a Skeletal Priest, Decrepify for CC and Execute, Golem for damage and unstoppable, and Bone Prison for vulnerable and extra damage. I have Hemorrhage to gain Fortify, but I could replace this for some other skill like Blood Mist if I really wanted to, since I have other ways to generate Fortify on this build. Then we have the ultimate Army of the Dead. Army of the Dead here does enormous damage and gives a huge damage boost too with Unyielding Commander's Aspect, as I mentioned earlier. So I used Flicker Step as a way to get almost zero downtime on this. I demonstrated that a moment ago as well. I have 183 Paragon points spent, which is roughly Paragon level 150. 5 boards with corresponding glyphs. So I have the starting board with Eliminator, then Cult Leader board with Dead Razor glyph, Scent of Death board with Amplify glyph, Frailty board with no glyph yet, and Flesh Eater board with Essence glyph. There are 4 legendary nodes being used here and 4 rank 15 glyphs with secondary bonuses active. One of these glyphs is rank 46, that being Essence for critical strike damage. When it comes to Mercenaries, I was using Variana for the longest time because she gives movement speed, which this build is sort of lacking. Also, she gives attack speed, which my minions need, but eventually, with all the modifiers I pick up from items and abilities, I reach the cap on my minions anyway. So, just before I did my Pit 55 run to unlock Torment 4, I switched Variana for Rahir just because I was too lazy to figure out another way that I could reach the cap on resistances. Rahir has a number of abilities that I'm not going to cover. The main one that I care about in this case is Rahir's Aegis. It's a passive that grants me 15% resistance to all elements, and that's what allows me to reach the cap, along with all the other bonuses on my resistances, and when I pop my elixirs and incense as well. For my reinforcement, I'm using Subo to CC monsters whenever I get CC'd, but you could also use Aldkin's Field of Languish for this too. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is my progression from level 1 to 60, and then Torment 1 to 4. When I started out, I ran Helltides on normal difficulty to farm monsters and Aberrant Cinders, but I opened Tortured Gifts on hard mode so I could get even more XP. Ideally, it would have been nice to open the chests on Penitent to get the most amount of XP possible before you make it into the Torments, but I ended up dying since I had no survivability. When the first Helltide I ran finished, I went to the Alderwood dungeon to pick up Aspect of Reanimation, and then imprinted it into the first two-hander that I was able to find, and then every two-hander that came after it. After that, I spammed incursions with whispers in between until I reached level 50. Oh yeah, there you go. There's an incursion there, and sometimes they even come with whispers. And then I did all of the strongholds until I hit level 59. And turned in my renown rewards to reach level 60. Basically, I did Helltides into unlocking aspects, into incursions and whispers, into strongholds and renown. Upon reaching Torment 1, I went to go fight bosses for their powers. I was able to do this because you don't need boss mats to fight the bosses anymore. You just need them for the item rewards. So right now, if I wanted to, I do have Judicator's masks, but even if I didn't have any, I could teleport directly over to Urivar so that I could go and pick up his power, assuming that I'm able to defeat him, which I was. I reached Torment 2 pretty easily using the boss power from Zir, though, at the time, although I eventually switched out Zir's boss power out for Urivar's. At Torment 2, my first priority was to get the Ring of Mendelin, since it's such a massive damage boost for this build. And in Torment 3, I leveled my glyphs and masterworked my gear to rank 4 at least. To summarize, I got boss powers in Torment 1, my build's uniques in Torment 2, and did my glyphs and masterworking in Torment 3. If you're making your own Minion Necro and are still somehow missing any uniques or aspects or tempers by this point, then try to pick those up if you can before running Pit 55. So, just to recap, this build is pretty strong for reaching Torment 4. As long as you have the Ring of Mendelin and the damage multipliers that I went over in this video, you should wipe out most packs when you activate your ult. Your ult gets reset constantly with Flicker Step. And perhaps most of all, you yourself have plenty of ways to soak up damage while evading through monsters using Flicker Step, including Fortify, Barrier, Damage Reduction, and shared damage with your golem. That's one more thing I just need to cover real quick. In Book of the Dead, you can see that I was running Skirmisher with an additional Skirmisher on top of it, Skeletal Mages with increased damage for each active Shadow Mage, and then for my Golem, I was using a Blood Golem that absorbs 30% of the damage that I normally take. My health pool is also pretty large, especially when I activate my elixir and incense, and my armor and resistances will basically be maxed out too. That's pretty much it for the Minion Necro. Anyway, I hope this helps. Thanks everyone for watching, and venture out.